This is part of Haps's Election Day 2020 coverage. Look at this fancy image they got. And I have to answer one question to those of you who have asked me on social media already. Yes, I have a body. It's Haps. I don't know. I'm going to zoom in. I can back up if you want. I can do whatever you want. I could do anything. I'll do cartwheels, but this is how close they go. On other things that I've been on, I've been a little wider framed, and let's just say I'm very wide framed, if you know what I mean. All right, let's see the fancy image. But nonetheless, we will have that. We've got three awesome people joining us today. We have Chloe Liu, who's up in Boston, I believe. She is going to be joining us, and she set up outside the Massachusetts State House. So we have that. And you know the thing about Haps, they love to go all over the place. So that's going to be great. Then Jeff Ayers, he does stuff for MSNBC, and he's in New York, and he supposedly he's going to try to be in front of Trump Tower, which makes me laugh already because that's going to be a fun place. And that just reminds me of The Apprentice. So when he comes on, we're going to dun 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 dun. That's what we'll play when he comes there. And then my guy, Matt McClure, is going to join us. He is the executive producer and morning anchor of the Georgia News Network. And we're going to find out what the story is in Georgia. So we got Massachusetts covered. We got New York covered. We've got Georgia covered. And even though the Northeast ones, I mean, look, I wouldn't call them swing states by any stretch. And, you know, it's very funny. It's one of the things that I wanted to talk about as we say hello to Cameron, say hello to Pablo, say hello to Mikey, and everyone else who's here. Thank you so much for watching. The one thing that I hate is when you live in a state that is traditionally a blue state or a red state, there's very little chance for wiggle. And what I mean by that is what's happened in Texas has been phenomenal. The fact that Texas is up for grabs, is truly remarkable. What it means is that people are really on top of things. And that is very impressive. That, again, if it goes red, I've said this before, and, you know, a lot of you folks are watching me for the first time. You've never seen a show that I've done before. I'm in the middle. I don't have a Democrat Republican prejudice. I do think certain people in certain parties are just absolute jerks, and I don't hide that fact. And I will talk about safety. That's what I care about. Safety is important to me. Dignity is important to me. That it's not what party you're affiliated with. So having said that, I love the idea that Texas and Georgia could go either way. That's very interesting to me. I live in New Jersey. New Jersey was never going to a Republican. I don't care if Superman came from Krypton and ran in the Republican Party. Although, would Superman be a Republican? I don't know. And just this idea that New Jersey always votes Democrat. So my vote, as much as I do believe my vote counts, because I voted for congressmen, I voted for representatives, I voted for all kinds of different offices. But what I don't do is I'm not in that swing state. I'm not in a state where I'm worried about what's going to happen. That has been given to Joe Biden since this campaign began. New Jersey, home of the wonderful Sopranos. There you go, Tony Soprano. Somebody else wrote, are you in South Jersey or North Jersey? I'm in North Jersey. I grew up in Central Jersey. I've lived all over the country. I've lived in Syracuse. I lived in Denver, Colorado. I lived in Seattle, Washington. I lived in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn. I lived in Hoboken, and now I live back in North Jersey. And yeah, I'm in North Jersey. What exit? 15. If you're coming from the south, you can get to me from 14. If you're coming from the north. And I love the Sopranos. But I'm Jersey through and through. I'm a huge Devils fan. That's my thing. And one of these days when the election's over, I want to do a Haps thing on the Devils. We'll just talk about the Devils, nothing else. No other thing. And we won't even say one. I won't take any questions unless they're devil's questions. We'll do that. And I saw in the chat, Arizona is also up for grabs. There's no secret about that. The one thing that you have to recognize with all of these swing states is that fascinates me because they can play either way. There's no secret about the path to victory for both these gentlemen. For Donald Trump, the way he wins, it's the way he won in 2016. He has to sweep a lot of these swing states. He has to win Florida, Georgia, Ohio. He just has to win. He has to win Texas. He has to win Arizona. He has to win. And that's the only way he's going to do it, which is why I think the media is hesitant to insist that, at least from my perspective, I think the media is going to be hesitant to call it for Joe Biden because they don't want to hear the vitriol. And that's where, this is going to drive me nuts, because is he going to be all right? What happened there? Did I come up? No, we're trying to get Chloe on here, and I believe we have Chloe. And as soon as I know that we have Chloe, we'll bring her on. Am I hearing Chloe? Is that who that is? Well, let's bring her on here. Look at you. How great do you look? You're in the front of the Massachusetts State House. Welcome. How are you? I don't know if she can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Seth. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome. How are you? Tell me what's going on around there.
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me. So, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm right outside the Massachusetts State House, if you can see. Right behind me, it's got a nice golden dome, which is why it's kind of reflecting and you can't really see it. But it's a cold day here in Boston. Not many people out on the streets, actually. I have a store right across from me that is currently being boarded up as I speak. If I could flip the camera here. Can you see it? Am I frozen?
You froze a little bit.
It looks like, here we go. Do you see that store in the corner being boarded up?
Yep.
So that's sort of been Boston over the past couple of days. I walked past Newbury Street a little bit earlier, which is one of the most popular shopping destinations here in downtown Boston. And most, if not all of the stores have been boarded up in preparation for what may happen. I don't want to say for sure, but for what may happen tonight and the days following Election Day as we wait for results. But latest Massachusetts polls have Joe Biden polling ahead at 62%, with President Trump trailing behind at 28%, and that's to be expected. As you mentioned earlier, these states up in the Northeast, they're really not swing states. We can predict what is going to come out of Massachusetts here. But yeah, that's what's been going on up here in Boston.
Well, the one thing that I do wonder about, and when it comes to protests of any kind, I think that what could happen is people could take to the streets if they start getting news that they don't like. Up there, if Joe Biden wins this presidency and it's declared by 11 o'clock, I don't think those stores have anything to worry about. That's just my hunch. I can't imagine all of a sudden civil unrest in the Northeast with a Joe Biden victory. Now, if the news starts to go the other way and Donald Trump wins Florida early, and then people could get angry. But again, I'm so against the unrest for that. This election has been tumultuous enough, and unless some idiot incites something, I really don't expect there to be much damage. I don't mind these places being prepared, but I just don't think the rhetoric is there.
I agree with you, Seth. Boston, we've seen protests over the past couple of months related to Black Lives Matter. Recently, there have been protests related to Justice Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation. But most of these protests in Boston have been peaceful. There was one riot earlier, I believe, in the summer that occurred, but it happened after a protest had actually wrapped up. So that riot was unrelated to any of the protests that have been happening in Boston. So I agree with you, Seth. I think there really isn't as big of a concern, at least here in Boston, as all of these boarded up stores indicate. Now, I think Washington, D.C. might be a different story, but in terms of just how much action we're going to be seeing on the streets, at least here tonight, I don't think it poses a very big threat.
You know, one of the things that I have known in Boston, and I say this out of love. I mean, I love Boston. I've been to Boston dozens of times, but you know, when I cover sports there have been a lot of players that are on record as saying they didn't want to play there because they used to hear, negative racial tones coming from the fans at Fenway Park. I mean, I've seen that kind of stuff. So I just think that when you think about solidarity in Boston, that goes way deeper than anything going on with this election.
Definitely. Boston is a majority-minority city. It's definitely, I think...
it's been called a racist town. It
is. I mean, you have...
You're a minority, and I respect the heck out of that.
Minority, yes. I mean, you know the saying, people have stereotypes about Bostonians and people from Massachusetts. You know, the term masshole doesn't come from nowhere.
Correct.
So I think, I would say there's some basis to that, but at the same time, Boston it's a college town. You have so many universities around. I go to BU, Boston University, go Terriers. But you have Harvard across the river, MIT. I'm standing 5 minutes away from Emerson College. So you have a lot of Gen Z, you have a lot of young folks here in this town. And I don't want to say for everyone, because I don't know every single college student in this city. But I would say the younger generation, at least, doesn't really, they're as far as I know, they're not racist. That's not to say there aren't people who unfortunately do feel like race or skin color is a point of prejudice. But I think there's obviously, there are two sides to every single argument, and that certainly stands here in Boston.
Well, the one thing that you have to recognize, in my opinion, is I think that people just want to have their voices be heard. You mentioned it's a lot of young people, and young people, galvanized the vote in 2008. I genuinely thought that. But in 2016, and again, this doesn't play to Massachusetts, but in 2016, I thought there were a lot of people that had misgivings, and I admit freely, I had misgivings about Hillary. There were things that I didn't feel right about. I voted for her, but I wasn't sure, and I understood a lot of that. I just think that in this day and age of social media, there isn't a person in Boston that hasn't seen everything that Donald Trump tweets, and they don't have to follow him to do so. So the fact is that the rhetoric has been with such vitriol that, to me, it has gotten so ugly all over the place, and I feel like we've never been more divided.
I can definitely attest to that sentiment. I think this election specifically has really torn this country into two pieces, and I think that's unfortunate that that's the way it is. And I think the system is really what's causing all these problems, the bipartisan system. Now, previous elections, I don't think we've ever seen this big of a divide. When President Trump ran in 2016, that obviously caused chatter or people to have already form opinions about him, but those opinions about President Trump have escalated, I would say, for a lot of people over the past 4 years, given that he has an active track record now as the president. So I think that's a huge contributor to what's driving these two parties apart.
And I'm old enough to remember there was a reality show that he was on, and it was always on. The promos were constant. And all I saw was that story. And I don't know if you saw this, but I saw the story this morning, and they interviewed Deadline Hollywood, already interviewed an executive from Fox News. They said that if Trump loses, he's going to start his own television network. And that will be perfect. That will be perfect. I want the One America Network, the Fox News Network, and Trump's new network to all merge into one so I can block it on my TV. It'll be so easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking into the future, we all have expectations of what's going to happen. We all have our hopes and dreams. But I mean, for me as a journalist, I definitely try my best to keep my opinions and bias out of everything that I do. But at the end of the day, like, we're all human, right? We all have
Of course,
hopes
how could you
for
not
how
be?
things
Right.
are going to go exactly. But I think really this year it's so hard to say. You have all these different factors with the election this year. You have, timing of ballot counts. You have, obviously, the pandemic has been a huge factor in this year's presidential election. So there are so many unknown factors that really no one knows what's going to happen, and we're just all going with the flow.
No, it's wild, and the things that have been said, the nastiness from both sides. The fact of the matter is I'm in the middle. I don't have a bias, and yeah, the Republican tax plan, I understand it. I get it. It makes sense, but Joe Biden has said repeatedly he's not going to raise taxes for the middle class, and yet every commercial you see says he's going to raise taxes for the middle class. It's like you literally have freedom to say whatever the heck you want, and that's where I hate this. I like freedom of speech, but they take it so far, and it's what person is that dumb? So I'll end it with this question for you. Do you think there's a person in Boston, America, or the world that hadn't made their mind up 2 months ago?
That is a very good question, Seth. I think there probably is someone out there who, up until this point, probably still has no idea who they're voting for. I know people personally who have chosen not to vote in this election. Specifically, people who are Republican, who don't want to vote for President Trump, but at the same time, they don't want to vote against their party for Biden. So, they might choose to vote third party, or they might choose not to vote at all. So I think, there probably are people out there who don't know who they want to vote for based out of a hatred of, like, both candidates. I don't like either of these choices, so I'm just not going to vote.
I get it. I totally get it. Hey, great job. Chloe Liu, everybody. Follow her here on Haps. She's got great stuff, and she's going to be contributing all night long. Thank you so much. Oh, and say hello to Jeff, because Jeff is coming from New York. And let's just face it, New York and Boston always have this rivalry, so you might as well just take a shot at him right now. There's New York. That's Jeff. Chloe, thanks.
Thank you, Seth. One last thing, I guess, about New York. It's funny you say that, because I'm actually a Rangers fan, even though I'm from Boston. So I'm not one of those crazy Boston sports fans. I'm going to say, let's go Rangers.
Fire fan, and all my rivals. This is awful. I can't do this. No way. All right, Chloe, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for having me, Seth.
See ya. Let's welcome in Jeff Ayers. Jeff, where are you in front of? And we saw the building. Why don't you tell everybody who couldn't see?
So I'm on Fifth Avenue, Seth, right across from Trump Tower. You can actually see he walked away. We got a guy in a rubber Trump mask on this corner. Nice. And over here on the opposite side, we have a Trump supporter with a 4 more years flag in front of the Armani Fifth Avenue. So here's the Trump Tower.
You're right in the middle of it.
It's not a good day to get the new Omega watch from the canceled James Bond movie. You can see that's getting boarded up right now as we speak. You're going to have to wait for the new Seamaster a couple more days. But yeah, I'm sure you've heard that a lot of stores are being boarded up, like in Boston. Fifth Avenue is definitely a different look right now. All of the stores closed early. Or a great majority of the stores as I walk down Madison and Fifth Avenue. I biked down Central Park about 50 blocks, and there are a lot of crews still out here applying plywood to the storefronts. Here's my Trump friend back there. There we go.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, there you go.
But you'll see
how much money do you think he's made? How much money has that clown made all day long? You think people have given him money?
I hope he's getting tipped. It's cold. He's not wearing a jacket, Right now he's staring pensively at the real Donald Tower. So he's definitely he's hamming it up. It's interesting because of the heavy security around Trump Tower. It's one of the few places around here that isn't covered in plywood because they're just not worried that anyone's going to get past the security detail, I guess.
The guys in the chat room, your boys, Peter and Pablo, want you to interview the guy. I would be scared to death to interview him because this is a guy. If that's not an N95 mask that guy's wearing.
It's not, and it doesn't count. But we could say hi real quick. We actually have the Donald here. Excuse me, Don. Don. Let's see. He may have earplugs in. There's that hair. There's that hair. There he is. Hey, good to see you. I got a couple of your ties from when I was in middle school. Yeah. There you go. Looking forward to the next season.
Could you imagine? So, Jeff, I don't know if you saw that story this morning. Deadline had it. They interviewed someone from Fox News that the rumor is that if Donald Trump loses tonight, that he wants to launch his own TV network. Your thoughts?
Well, I saw that after the previous election, when the rumor mill started going, and then there were reports of insiders and things like that he was gearing up to launch that he didn't expect to win, that he didn't want to win, if you believe some of the books that have been written about the 2016 election and Trump's candidacy. It sounded like there was almost a disappointment or a surprise, at least, that he won last time, and that Trump TV was ready to go, and that it was a marketing stunt for Trump TV with a lot of the speculation. So I would not be surprised if that's back on the table or remains on the table. I think he's already started digging into Fox News the way he does MSNBC and CNN. Yep. And he could easily launch his own network and has the viewership built in right there. I think it would be a successful venture.
And there are dozens, and I'm telling you right now, there are dozens of journalists going through their own personal Twitter timelines and Instagram posts, deleting any anti-Trump stuff that they've done over the last 4 years, because they're going to be sending resumes to that place and they're going to try to get jobs. And there's, the funny part about all of that is all the people that have been eviscerating him in the media. And I mean, they've been just killing him. They would work for Trump TV in 10 seconds. And there's no shame in that whatsoever.
I certainly wouldn't. I will say that. I have a line.
Yeah, I don't know. I told you off the air. I'm not. There's no way I would do it either. But if they need a baseball insider, I'll be the Trump TV baseball insider. How about that?
There you go. I mean, he was famously a Democratic donor. So I am.
He was.
I am sincerely curious to see what he does if he doesn't win the election again. How he approaches his personal life, because I think you're going to see a lot fewer allies on the Republican side, burned bridges on the Democratic side. So it'll be interesting to see where he'll probably lean into the brand that has been successful the last 5 years.
And he's got a massive following. I mean, and that's what I wanted to touch on today, and I talked about it a little bit this morning. A lot of this incredible voter turnout, and it's over 100,000 votes. It's a record now for votes, and that's remarkable. But that's not the celebrities going on Twitter going, "Get out your vote." Like, just because John Legend told you to vote, that's not why it's happening. My instinct is it's because the lightning rod, and love him or hate him, he is an absolute lightning rod, and everybody knows it.
Very polarizing. And, I'm in this city, obviously, where we're not really concerned which way it's going to flip. Trump got, I think, 19% of the vote in 2016. It's not really a question here, although you have seen, over 1 million early votes cast in New York City the first year that we've been allowed to vote early in a presidential election. And that's more than a third of the total amount of votes in 2016 out of New York City.
Right. The argument that I saw, at least, for all of this, and I said at the very beginning of the show, I said I don't like that I'm not in a swing state. We're going to have a guy in just a couple of minutes. We're going to go down to Georgia. My guy Matt McClure from the Georgia News Network. He's going to tell us exactly what's going on down there, because that's where the election gets interesting. And that's nothing against the people in New York and Boston, but
Right.
Superman could come in from Krypton, and he's not going to win New York or New Jersey. It's always Democratic. It's
Right.
going to always be, and it probably will be till the end, until they change the whole system.
Well, and it raises the question: where is the concern coming from? Is it fear mongering or what that is causing the massive boarding up of retail shops and other buildings? Although I imagine that it is cheaper to be safe than sorry in these cases.
I would think. I would think. And like I said, we talked about this off the air. I see, there are positives, from both sides. But it doesn't mean that we have to make masks wearing political. We don't have to be racial. That's not a thing that we have to do. There's arguments that can be made that just because you're towing a line doesn't mean you have to take things that are against your belief system. And that's what I get the sense that they're doing. Hey, man, get out of harm's way. Be safe, please. And let's talk again later this evening.
Thanks for having me.
You got it, brother. It's Jeff Ayers, and he is down right across the street from Trump Towers. And it's not true that every time he walks over there, the theme to The Apprentice plays, which is would be amazing. Dun, 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 dun. Come on. Nobody remembers that song? You all watched it. Come on. You all watched that show. There's no secret. All right, Jeff, we'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
So, yeah, that's Jeff Ayers. And now let's welcome my guy from the Georgia News Network. This is the guy that I talk to at 4 o'clock in the morning because, let's face it, that's how you have to have a friend. Let's welcome in the great Matt McClure. Now, Matt, unlike the first two guests, is inside a studio or his house, wherever he's working. So he's not wearing a mask. The other guys were out in the streets, and they're wearing masks, and I'm nervous for all of them. And so I'm not so worried about.
Yeah, no, I'm not catching COVID in the house. That's and I've actually been. It's probably been, I don't know, 3 months since I've actually been into the studio. It's a little bit crazy, this world we live in right now.
I know, it was weird. We had a power failure. I almost texted you yesterday. We had a power failure yesterday, and it came back after like 2.5 hours. But I was like, there's no studio to go to. Like that place is locked up. Like I wasn't working today. If that was happening,
right.
If we lost power, I was like, well, that'll be the end of that.
Well, we just had that tropical storm come through here. We were without power for like 3 days. So thank God for a friend of ours who loaned us a generator.
Oh, you're such a dedicated employee. My God. All right.
I have to be.
So what is it like to live in a state that could go either way? Like you don't know what's going to happen, and you have no idea where this is all going to go.
It's so funny because I heard you talking earlier about the places that you have lived, and I've kind of lived a lot of places as well. I mean, I lived in Georgia. The vast majority of my life. Was born here, grew up here, then moved to New York. Also lived in Connecticut. Also lived in New Jersey for a while before moving back to Georgia. And so it's a weird thing for me to live in kind of a swing state because up in the Northeast, I was used to living in very blue states. Here in Georgia, up until now anyway, it's been a very red state. So seeing these polls come out over the past, I don't know, several weeks now, where it showed a lot of tightening, several of them showing Biden ahead. I think the 538 politics average has Biden ahead by a point or two, is kind of crazy. And this is a political environment that we have not seen in this state since, I believe the last time a Democratic governor was elected in Georgia was 1998. It was Roy Barnes was elected in 1998. He lost in 2002 to Sonny Perdue, who's now the agriculture secretary for Donald Trump. And since then, it's been all Republican governors in the state of Georgia. The last time a Democrat won the presidential race here was in 1992, the first time Bill Clinton was elected. And he didn't get a majority. He got a plurality of the vote in Georgia because of the whole Ross Perot factor. Yep. But so it's very strange.
It is. And just clarify, Georgia, the way I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it really is, it's the metropolitan Atlanta, in the metro area down there, and all the great places that I have spent many a sleepless night covering Braves games over the years.
Oh, yeah.
but then there's rural Georgia, and rural Georgia is nothing like Atlanta. And the divide there, and again, I'm not stereotyping here, but it's a religious sect. It's a lot less diverse. There's no secrets about that. What I wonder, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, because I've had this conversation with you, I understand the Republican stance. I get it. But they see that guy and they see the hatred and the vitriol and the demeanor of that. How do those peaceful, kind Southern people, how do they see that and go, yep, I am going to a poll and I want 4 more years of that?
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like a disconnect in a lot of ways, because people will view it as either A, entertainment. I mean, he is a reality star, honestly, after all. Or B, they view it like team sports. I mean, these are people who have probably voted Republican for a long time and or sat out elections, but they like this guy so much they're becoming more and more involved in these rural areas. So it's a weird sort of dynamic. But politics is a lot like team sports in a lot of ways anyway. And I think, just in my own personal opinion standpoint, too much, much like you could overlook a lot with your team. If you are a diehard Mets fan or a diehard Braves fan or a diehard Yankees fan, whatever, you can overlook a lot. You're still going to be rooting for them. Sometimes with New York sports fans, it doesn't quite work that way.
But there's a parallel there.
There is a parallel, yeah.
I can show you a parallel there, and that's the Knicks owner, the Knicks and Rangers owner, James Dolan. This is a guy who was a known associate of Harvey Weinstein. He was a best friend of Harvey Weinstein, James Dolan, and then he paid a woman, Anuka Brown Sanders, hush money, and kept Isaiah Thomas, who had been accused of harassment, kept him as an employee and paid her off. And I can say those things and you can hear me say that, and then it'll be like, oh my God, I'm offended, right? Like, you can say that. That's an offensive thing. Yeah. Yet there are thousands, if not millions, of New York Knicks fans. They love the Knicks. They'll cheer what time do the Knicks play? What are we doing with the Knicks? And it's just like, wait a minute. Didn't you just say you're offended by that? So I guess I understand that. Do you get the sense that in Georgia, it is a vote for or against Trump, or did Biden make an impact there?
There is a certain Biden impact, although I will say I think a lot of it is a vote for or against Trump, especially when you look at things like in the suburbs, because suburban women have just fled Donald Trump, really. They did so to a large extent in 2016, but really in 2018, we saw that, especially in like the 6th congressional district in Georgia, where Lucy McBath beat out Karen Handel, who was the incumbent at the time. Karen Handel had won a special election against John Ossoff, who's actually right now running for the Senate seat against David Perdue, and could very well win that. That's also a very tight race in Georgia, and one that'll be interesting to watch. But the suburban women have really left Donald Trump. So you see that's sort of that when you work your way outside of Atlanta. There are also other large cities in Georgia: Savannah, Macon, Columbus, Augusta, Albany as well. But
Augusta,
you've got
the most diverse. Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know it from the Masters, but it really is actually pretty darn diverse. There's a large African-American population in Augusta. And then you go to Savannah. There are a lot of even more rural counties in South Georgia that vote Democratic. Peach County is one of those. It's very diverse in South Georgia. That's one that a lot of people are watching for tonight to see how that one goes.
Okay.
So there's when you get outside those big cities anyway, it's that sort of transition into the suburbs where you start to see more of a mix of Trump supporters and Biden supporters. And then it gets really Trump heavy when you get outside. So it's like, as the population dwindles, it almost follows that pattern.
And you can see it. Last question for me: how much of this debate and how much of the fact that Georgia could literally go either way is, on one hand, it's racial versus COVID?
Yeah, I think that it's a good mix of the two, really. I think there's been a lot of motivation on behalf of, or on the part of, younger voters in the state to really turn out, especially younger voters of color. We had some numbers that were kind of crazy. 400,000 people between 18 and 29 in the state of Georgia. This was a Tufts University study, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, voted early in Georgia, 400,000, and another 600,000 or so requested absentee ballots. And those are just kind of crazy numbers for the state made up of 10 million people altogether. So there are a lot of motivation there on both of those factors. I think regardless of age group, I think for older folks in the state of Georgia and kind of nationwide, but specifically here in Georgia, for older folks, you might see more of them skewing toward voting for Biden based on the COVID response. And for the younger voters, I think that you might see more of them skewing toward Biden because of not only the COVID response, but also because Georgia has really been at the center of a lot of these racial protests, and also some unfortunate and very tragic incidents as well with Ahmaud Arbery in South Georgia, Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, right there outside that Wendy's that is no longer standing, that was burned down during the protest. Yep. So there's been a lot of motivation, I think, on really both of those. It just sort of depends on who you are and your perspective.
And I remember when that Wendy's fire happened, we were interviewing somebody who was like across the street while it was on fire. We on a show that I was doing, and it rocked me. I totally remember that. That was one of the wilder things. What, from a journalism standpoint, is your plan now? Are you just going to wait for numbers? Do you think that there's going to be a time where your boss, who's also my boss, is going to come over and they're going to say, all right, we're done for the night? Like, what needs to happen? Does everybody need to tell you to go home? Do both campaigns need to speak? How does this end tonight?
That's a very good and interesting question. We have a live show that we're doing tonight that's supposed to wrap up about 1 a.m. So the plan is for us to, regardless of what happens,
to end it. Okay.
That'll be like the end. And hopefully, there'll be a decision, maybe not. A lot of people say probably not. But you just kind of have to wait and see. I mean, the thing that throws a wrench into all this, of course, is I'm sure you've talked about before, are the all of the absentee and mail-in ballots that have to be processed, and then in the different states when those can be counted. I mean, a lot of them have started counting them last week as they came, or a lot of them as they came in, but a lot of them can't start either counting them or even processing them until this morning, or even until after the polls close tonight. So it's a very weird thing that we've never encountered before. You just sort of have to watch the numbers and where they're coming from. And maybe we'll have a clear picture tonight. That could very well be possible. But
are the polls right, or are the polls like 2016 dead wrong? That's the question.
Yeah, that is the question. And a lot of pollsters, the vast majority of them actually, have made significant changes to their polling methods, at least what they wait for. Now they wait for education, which they didn't in 2016, and they missed a lot of those lower income white voters without college degrees that ended up voting for Trump. So that is something that we'll have to watch out for. I'm hoping the polls are accurate so it doesn't give us all more ulcers than we got in 2016, just because we're like, wait, what happened? Like, no matter what side you're on, it's like, okay, what just happened? Especially watching that New York Times needle. That's what I got into that night. And I was just like, it was way over here, like 99% Clinton. And then it was, by the time it was all over, not even all over, like the time it was 8:00 at night, it was like completely the other way.
Oh my God, I was shocked. I didn't know how to explain it. I couldn't do the show I didn't know what was going on. 2016 was a blur. Before I let you go, I have to apologize for one thing I said earlier in the show before you came on. I did say that even if Superman came from the planet Krypton and ran as a Republican in New York or New Jersey, he wouldn't win. But I want you to know that I would support him anyway.
Yes.
So listen,
that's amazing.
When you go vote, and I didn't realize when I had that joke made, I didn't realize I had the mask right here. So now we can pull it off, and I could have done this whole time with the Superman mask. That could have been perfect.
Such a great opportunity missed. But you know
what? A missed opportunity.
I miss all the opportunities to have cool masks because I don't have a cool mask. All of mine are either just like plain white or like blue or, some other red, some other color. They're all solid. I'm very boring with my mask wearing.
I looked online, and only old viewers are going to get this joke, but I looked online when the pandemic started, and I wanted to get a Greatest American Hero mask.
Yes.
And if you have ever seen that symbol, my wife said to me, "You're not getting a Nazi symbol on your mask." She goes, "People aren't going to know what that show is."
Right.
I said, "You're right. You're right. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that." So we went with Old Reliable here.
Good.
Matt, how can people find you online?
They can find me online. I'm on Twitter at Matt J. McClure. That's MATT, the letter J, MCCLURE on Twitter. You can find me there. And,
Now you're on Hap. So look at that.
That's right. I mean, I'm all over the place.
All right, man. Have a good luck tonight, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. You too. Have a good
See
one.
you, man. That is Matt McClure from the Georgia News Network. He's great. Thank you so much. Hey, listen, follow this channel because we're coming back. Another show at 7:30 tonight. We're going to do one more of these, over there at 7:30. So we're looking forward to seeing you all then. Until then, have a good one. My thanks to Chloe and to Jeff and to Matt for contributing to this show. Really a lot of fun. We will see you at 7:30.